Hi, this is your trusted real estate advisor, David.
And Sharon.
Good evening. We are here this evening to discuss closing costs. What are closing costs? Closing costs are the expenses over and above the property's price that buyers and sellers incur to complete a real estate transaction. These costs may include origination fees, discount points, appraisal fees, title searches, title insurance, surveys, taxes, deed recording fees, credit report charges. By law, lenders are required to provide buyers with a closing disclosure 3 days before a scheduled closing or settlement date. Now, there are some key takeaways. 1. Closing costs are fees due at the closing of a real estate transaction in addition to the property's purchase price. Both buyers and sellers may be subject to closing costs, and in fact, both buyers and sellers are subject to certain portions of the closing cost. Examples of closing costs will include fees related to the origination and underwriting of a mortgage, real estate commissions, taxes, insurance, and record filing. Closing costs must be disclosed by law to buyers and sellers and agreed upon before a real estate deal can be completed. Now, how much are closing costs? Closing costs occur when a property title is transferred from the seller to the buyer. The closing costs can vary by location and depend on the property value. Home buyers typically pay between 3 and 6% of the purchase price in closing costs. So as an example, a mortgage of $300,000 will cost approximately between $9,000 and $18,000 at settlement. Now, it is true that depending on jurisdiction, you can range between 3 and 6%. As a matter of fact, in an FHA loan, you can ask for almost 6% in closing costs in the actual contract. At least we can here in Georgia where we are. But on average, the closing cost now, I would say, here probably comes closer to like 4.5%, adding your prepaids and stuff like that. But the range of 3 to 6% is a good average. The nationwide average for closing costs for single family property in 2021 was $6,900 with transfer taxes and $3,860 excluding taxes. But I don't want to get too deep in the weeds with that because that's someone else's statistics and we don't really know how valuable or how truthful that is. So I really don't want to quote that or state that. But I do want to discuss a little bit about what closing costs include. Application fee. There's a fee charged by the lender to process a mortgage application. Application fees are generally buyer costs. That's usually a buyer fee, okay? Attorney fee is a fee that's required in some states and charged by the real estate attorney to prepare and review home purchase agreements and contracts. So that's most of the time also a buyer fee. Closing fee, also known as escrow fee, this is paid to the closing company. Here in Georgia, we don't have a closing fee because we don't use escrow companies, but some states do. Courier fee, paid for the transportation of paper documents. There could be a courier fee or a mail fee, just depends on how the attorney goes about, processing or sending the documents into the county. Credit report fee is a charge to pull credit reports from the 3 major credit bureaus. In some states that may technically be, now don't get me wrong, all of these are closing costs, but they're not necessarily all assessed at closing. So some of these may be assessed up front by the lender, which means that the buyer has to pay these fees up front to the lender, okay? So application fee would be an upfront cost. Credit report, they generally charge $25, $30, whatever it is to pull a credit report. That could also be an upfront fee. What we call escrow, some places call an escrow deposit, we call them prepaids. But basically what we're talking about there is a couple of months of property taxes and a couple of months of your homeowner's insurance. Because what happens is that your lender has to build what they call an escrow account for you. And it's from that escrow account that your property taxes are paid and that your homeowner's insurance is paid. And they don't pay it monthly, they pay the full amount when the bill comes due. Flood determination and monitoring fee is not a fee here in Georgia. It could very well be a fee in areas where flooding and all of that is a big issue. That determination may be necessary if you are in a place where they do have a lot of floods, where you have to like purchase flood insurance and everything from the federal government. So that may come into play. But like I said, I don't know of that being used here where we are. Homeowners insurance, a requirement. You must have homeowners insurance if it is a loan, okay? And that information the closing attorney has to have. They have to know who the insurance company. In fact, the lender is going to know who the homeowners insurance company is as well, okay? Because you cannot do the loan without homeowners insurance. Lead-based paint inspection. Here, a lead-based paint exhibit has to accompany the contract if the property is built in 1978 or prior, okay? And that's basically just making the buyer aware of the possible existence of lead paint. Doesn't mean that there is any, but it's just that there's a possibility because of the age of the home. But there's no such thing here as quote unquote a lead-based paint inspection, unless there's some kind of issue, or there's some kind of substantial issue that's been revealed regarding the existence of lead-based paint or lead-based paint chips or something like that, and it becomes an issue in the contract. Then you may have somebody come out, but it isn't something that's done here routinely. It may be done routinely though in other states, other municipalities. The other thing is title insurance. Now, Sharon and I have talked about title insurance in previous videos. I've always said if it's good for the lender, it's good for you. All lenders will require title insurance. So since they require title insurance, you want title insurance. And the reason why you want it is because this is what title insurance does. Title insurance is paid to the title company and protects the lender and the buyer if an ownership dispute or lien arises not found in the title search. So in other words, it's protection in case something happens down the road that wasn't revealed at closing. It protects you, it protects your lender. So you want title insurance. Now, most of the time, the lenders are going to put on their title insurance. They're only if you don't ask for it, you won't get it. But I'm advising you as a buyer, you want title insurance. The next thing is origination fees. Origination fees, this covers the administrative cost to process a mortgage, and it's typically equivalent to 1% of the loan amount. Also, pest inspections. Now, pest inspections here are normally what we call a termite letter, okay? Some lenders will require a termite letter. FHA requires a termite letter. VA will require a termite letter. Different lenders will require a termite letter just to make sure that there's no termite issues or anything like that. That's the only pest control. Now, again, in other states, depending on what their pest control issues are, they may do pest inspections or whatever for whatever their issues are there. But here, mostly it deals with termites. Also, points, well, what's commonly referred to as discount points. These are optional upfront payments to the lender to reduce your interest rate on a loan. So what points does is they allow you to buy down your interest rate. So let's just say you start out at a high interest rate, you can buy that interest rate down for additional monies down or whatever the case might be. Prepaid interest. Prepaid interest accrues on a loan between closing and the first mortgage payment. Okay, so now, for instance here, if you close in the middle of a month, it's generally 45 days before your first mortgage payment is due. Okay? So prepaid interest means that we're collecting 45 days of interest from you up front because your first mortgage payment is going to be 45 days from that day. And so the banks aren't going to lose money. So they're going to collect all the interest that they would get from you from the date of closing until your first mortgage payment. The next thing is PMI, which is mortgage insurance. All right. Mortgage insurance is required if there's less than a 20% down payment. So in other words, in order not to have to pay mortgage insurance, there has to be an 80-20 loan to value, which means you put down 20% of the value of the home. So just for instance, if it was a $100,000 home, you put down 20 grand. If you put down at least 20 grand, then you have an 80-20. You don't have to pay mortgage insurance. Now, the thing about mortgage insurance is that once you reach an 80-20, you no longer have to pay mortgage insurance. But what happens a lot of times is that people forget. They don't pay attention. They just get used to paying their mortgage, so they just keep paying it every month over year after year after year. And so they've surpassed the 80-20 a while ago between the appreciation of their home and the payments that they've been making against the loan. So they don't think to call a lender and say, hey, I'm beyond the 80-20, so you can stop the mortgage insurance. Because the mortgage company is just going to keep on collecting. So if you don't say anything, they're just going to keep on collecting. So, because they're not paying attention to the individual loans like that either. But if you bring it to their attention and you're at an 80-20, they will stop taking mortgage insurance. Also, property appraisal fees. Property appraisal fee is also generally an upfront cost to the buyer because most lenders here want to collect the appraisal fee from you up front. The reason that they collect it from you up front is if for whatever reason you decide not to go through with the transaction, they don't want to be on the hook for the cost of the appraisal. So they charge. So that's an upfront fee to the buyer. Okay. And then also property taxes. Property taxes are part of those escrow fees or what we call prepaids. Okay. So that goes along with your homeowner's insurance. And usually, like I said, the lender will hold a couple of months of property taxes back, also a couple of months of insurance. And then they'll pay everything, and then everything above your principal and interest is what you call your escrow, and that goes into your escrow account, and it's from that escrow account that they pay property taxes and homeowners insurance. Also, there's a recording fee. There's a fee charged by the city or county for recording public land records. Survey fee is a fee charged by a surveying company to confirm a property's boundaries. Sharon and I have spoken in past videos that we strongly recommend a buyer buying a resale to get a survey. But it is not necessary for you to do that until after you close. You can do that sometime down the line after you close. And the reason why you want a survey is because you want to know what the boundaries are of your property. Now, the person who you bought it from has told you what they know based on what they were told. The only two people who really know for sure is whoever bought the house new and whoever built the property. Because whoever bought the house new received a survey when they bought the house. But most resale people, they don't have a survey. All they're going by is what they were told. So you want a survey. And you want the survey because you need to know if somebody's built a fence on your property, if somebody has a tree overhanging your property. You need to know what your property boundaries are. And the only way that you can really know that for sure is a survey. The next thing is a title search fee. These are the fee charged to analyze property's ownership records. Reason why you want a title search is that you want to make sure that the title is clear and free of any encumbrances. There's no liens, no judgments, anything like that against the property. So you want to make sure that there's clean title. And in no state will you close if there's any issues with the title. You know, because they call it a cloud on the title. If there's any clouds on the title, you cannot close until all of that is resolved. And then next thing is transfer tax. This is a tax levied by the state or local government to transfer the title from the seller to the buyer. Now, any of these fees that I've spoken of that I didn't say is a buyer fee means it's a negotiable fee. Okay, it can be negotiated between the seller or the buyer. It's not hard and fast that one or the other pays it. And then there is an underwriting fee. The lender, this is a fee to verify the buyer's financial information, income, employment, and credit for final loan approval. You are not approved for a loan unless it has gone through underwriting. Unless you have been approved through underwriting, you do not have a pre-approved loan. Until it goes through underwriting and you get a final approval through underwriting, it is a pre-qualification. It is not a pre-approval. Some lenders will tell you that their pre-qual and their pre-approval is one and the same. Not true. Pre-qualification is just that. It's whatever you told them and whatever preliminary checks they did. It is not until there's documents, W-2s, pay stubs, credit reports, the whole nine, the whole file that goes to underwriting. Underwriting does whatever they do to check and give final approval. Once it's gone through underwriting and you receive final approval, at that point you have actually been approved for the loan. And it's not until it goes through underwriting that a loan package is put together and then submitted to the closing attorney so that you can indeed close. Depending on the type of mortgage or property, additional closing costs may include FHA mortgage insurance, a VA loan fee, or homeowners association transfer fee. Both FHA and VA loans apply to qualified buyers. Homeowners associations are commonly found in condominium or apartment complexes. They are also found in housing complexes, subdivisions, and places like that as well. And a couple of tips about HOAs. If there's a homeowners association, that is going to be taken into consideration when your lender approves you for a loan. So when your lender looks at your debt to income ratio and they're approving you for whatever your mortgage is, whatever the HOA is also going to be included in that approval. Okay? It's not going to be viewed as two separate issues because the HOA is mandatory, it's required. The lender has to take that into consideration. The other thing is some lenders with HOAs, if the delinquency rate of an HOA is too high, and when I'm talking about delinquency rate, I mean in some HOAs you have a lot of people who never pay their HOA fees, so they're delinquent. Some HOAs can assess your property; they can put a lien against your property for those HOA fees that you don't pay. But at any rate, there's a certain delinquency level when enough people don't pay. So a lot of lenders will check to see what the delinquency rate is of that particular HOA. And if the delinquency rate is too high, the lender will deny the loan. Now, it's not anything to do with you, the buyer. It has to do with the HOA. The lender is going to deny the loan. If your agent has not protected your interest in the contract, you may stand to lose your earnest money through no fault of your own. So make sure that your agent includes in the contract that in the event that there are any issues with the HOA that your lender deems unacceptable to the point that they're going to deny or decline your loan, either now or in the future. Before closing, make sure that your agent protects you in the contract so that if that happens, you don't lose your earnest money. And nothing's held against you because it's not your fault. You know what I mean? This is between the lender and the HOA. The lender is looking and saying, hey, the HOA delinquency rate is too high. We're not comfortable with them, and so we don't want to make this loan. But you shouldn't be penalized and lose your earnest money because of it. So make sure that your agent does indeed protect you in the loan. With that, we'll turn it over to Sharon.
Okay, so you heard a lot, and this is all a part of the buying and the selling process. Now, with your closing costs, you can negotiate. Now, I'm going to give you 3 tips on ways that you may be able to lower some of those closing costs. Remember, we've said to you in prior videos that it's advised that you shop around for a lender. Contact at least 3 lenders when you go shopping for your loan. This gives you an opportunity to compare different lender fees because they're not set in stone. They're not all the same. So you compare those lender fees and that'll let you know which would best suit your budget. Also, while you're doing that, you can ask them about their loan origination fees, which is part of their lender fees too. But you basically, any fee that the mortgage company is going, and they'll tell you, it's not a secret, they'll tell you any fees that they're going to assess on you, you can negotiate and see if it can be lowered. Another thing that you can do is when you have your offer written up, you can speak with your agent, you guys discuss it, and you can ask the seller to possibly contribute towards closing costs. That will lessen the amount of money coming out of your pocket if you can come to an agreeable amount that the seller is willing. Now, this is optional, they don't have to, but if the seller is willing to contribute towards your closing costs. Also, back to the lender, also ask the lender if they have any rebates or any type of incentives that they're offering at the time that you apply for the loan, because many times they may have that. First time home buyer, or there's different qualifications they may have. So you just ask, it doesn't hurt to ask, are there any rebates or any incentives? Once you get all that information, then you'll know which lender best suits your budget. Another tip is, and this isn't to save money, but this is to prepare you. You can go online and you can look up closing cost calculators, and you'll know what house you're looking at. You'll know because you will have spoken to a lender and you got the amount of money that you are looking towards spending. You use that as your base, and it'll ask you a few questions. You answer those, and then that calculator will give you an estimate of what your closing costs would be. So this is all manageable, all doable, and this is what goes on when you buy and selling property. I hope that we have given you food for thought. I hope that we have helped you so that you're not going to be surprised, when this is brought up. And I really hope that if you have, I'm going to ask you, if you have any questions, anything that you've heard that we did not discuss, to put it in the comments section, and we'll be sure to get back to you with an answer. In the meantime, we wish you well, and we ask you to give us a like or subscribe if we've been of help to you. So with that, I say good night or good morning, depending on where you are, and take care. Bye-bye.
And we also want to point out one final thing to you, which is that closing costs is going to be based on the final loan amount.
Yeah.
So it isn't based on the sales price amount, it's based on the loan amount. Okay? So if you buy a $300,000 house, but you put down $40,000, it's only going to be on $260,000, not on $300,000. Okay? So it's important for us to point that out as well. But at that rate, until next time, your trusted real estate advisors, I'm David, this is Sharon signing out.